Good.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're all very welcome to very beautiful National Maritime Museum here in Dún Laoghaire, and welcome to this event as part of National Science Week 2024 and the European Geoscience Day. I just want to do a quick bit of housekeeping. We have 3 emergency exits. There's one here at the top. There's one in the back left and the front door which you came in. And we have bathrooms at the end of the room on both sides if anybody needs. And just to note that today is a relaxed event. If anyone needs to get up during the talk and move or have a break, that's totally fine. Don't be worried about it, we're not distracted. So my name is Fiona Byrne, and I've been asked to chair the panel discussion today because I'm an artist. I'm also neurodivergent, and I've been looking into some marine science in my own practice. So I'm very honoured and hugely interested to hear what the panel are going to be talking about today. So thank you very much for having me. We are going to talk to AlanJames Burns, who was part of an ICAR residency back in 2023 and was on board the Celtic Explorer with Dr. Audrey Morley from University of Galway and ICAR. And Fergus is from the communications team in ICAR. He manages all of their engagement and communications and is overseeing the residency. So it's great to have the scientist, the artist, and the education communicator here with us today to give us all the perspectives. We might start with you, Audrey. So as I said, Audrey is from the University of Galway and ICAR, and Audrey's work looks at climate change in the past in order to understand what changes might happen in the future. So she's particularly interested in air movements and how those can affect the temperatures and the salt levels within the Atlantic Ocean. And her work helps us to understand patterns in climate change and to kind of look back to the past to think about the future. So I'm wondering, Audrey, if you might tell us a little bit about specifically the research that you were doing on the Celtic Explorer.
Yeah.
Oh, we might need to turn it on.
First of all, thank you so much for having me and for everybody here who came to this event. I don't want to talk too much because I'm really interested in your questions and really keen on having actually a conversation with you guys. But on this trip to the Arctic, so first of all, maybe what do I do? What's my research about? I'm a climate historian, or that's maybe the best way of explaining what I do. I want to understand how climate changes. And in order to do that, we have to look at natural climate archives because our observations of climate change are very short. They're maybe at most hundreds of years old. And during that time period, our climate hasn't really changed much. So if we really want to understand how climate changes abruptly to different conditions, we need to look at natural archives of climate change. And some of you might have heard of ice core records that go back in time and can tell us about the atmosphere and how that has changed in the past. Marine sediment cores can tell us how the ocean changed in the past. And that was why we went to the Arctic. And we studied the marine sediment cores and what is preserved inside. And inside are tiny organisms.
I don't know. Try it again. See.
The tiny organisms called Foraminifera. And you've seen many pictures displayed out here, and they're teeny tiny, they're not bigger than a grain of sand. And when they're alive, they float in the surface ocean, and they build that shell out of the elements that are available in the seawater. So during their lifetime, they record the chemistry of the ocean. And then when they pass and sink to the ocean floor, they're deposited year upon year, decade upon decade, and millennia over millennia in these marine archives. And when we go back in time and measure the chemistry of these foraminifera, we have a record of what the chemistry was like in the past. And that can tell us about climate change. And this is what we were doing out there. We went out there, we collected these marine sediment cores, but also the living foraminifera to really understand how that tiny organism records climate change or the climate signal inside.
Amazing, thank you so much, and I knew you would explain it much better than I could ever do. And it's incredible to think of how the scale of the time that you were looking at, it really is very hard to even get your brain around. And so I might go to you, Alan, and ask you to maybe introduce your artistic practice and maybe why you applied to go on this cruise. And maybe you could give us a quick intro to the video and the contents of that.
Yes. Hi everyone. I'm Alan, and I move my hands a lot to process my thinking. I the cruise because I wanted to go to the Arctic for a month. That was getting very serious. And that was a really good reason to apply. But I was asked to kind of think about prior to going, about what I would, what research I would undertake as an artist whilst on that trip. And Audrey shared the kind of research, the proposal for the cruise with me, and I kind of was looking at the Forams, Foraminifera, and how much information their lived experience, like they just lived, and the tiny organisms, and how much information they contain, and how much wealth of how much information they contain and we can share with the world to make us all understand each other and our environments better. Really struck me as somebody who grew up with disabilities and being questioned throughout my lifetime about what I bring to society. I was often called slow, I was often called strange, or different kind of words that I were put onto me through society. And when I was looking at these tiny organisms and how important they are, and how they're not strange, they're not slow, they're not small, their world, they're so I kind of parallel that. And one of my jobs, and one of the things I do as an artist, is trying to break down, trying to find alternative ways into understanding complex things. So I decided to do in the residency and explore that. So I'm currently in a process of still exploring that. So this is like the beginning of this. We went on a cruise about a year ago, and this is the first iteration out of that. And we're hoping to turn it into to kind of continue this line of exploring these themes through accessible ways. Don't know if I answered the question.
Yes, definitely did, and it's so lovely to hear you talk about that idea of finding pathways into complex ideas, and I think that segues really well into Fergus and your role. And Fergus is a science communicator and the communications manager at ICRAG in the University College of Dublin, and often works with teachers, artists, and members of the public to kind of make science engaging and accessible. So exactly what Alan's been talking about. So maybe you could give us a little insight in terms of the motivation behind the artist residency for ICRAG and why you're sending artists off into the ocean.
It was actually like, I remember when we were when I ran Audrey, or maybe Audrey ran me, and we were like, we have a spare, we have a spares, bird. And I was like, brilliant, okay, let's see if I can find someone. And then I was in touch with Alan, and I was like, Alan, you can go, but like no dry land for a month. Like none. How do you feel about that? And like Alan was just like all in on it. And that is one of the parts of my job that I find most rewarding, is getting to work with people like Alan, but also trying to create the stage for artists like Alan to resonate. And one of the reasons that we in ICRAG have put such a focus on trying to work with artists And creatives, we've done things like creative writing programs, we've worked with choirs, is that what comes out at the other end cannot be predicted at the start. And it can lead to like truly transformative work. Like for those of you who haven't yet viewed Alan's piece or listened to it, like it is an absolutely fascinating 10-minute like almost otherworldly exploration, and it will lift you out of this beautiful scene we are today, but it will transport you up to off the coast of Greenland. It will transform you into being like a tiny Foram sized speck, and it'll really make you feel something, which as scientists is like we're trained. Audrey and I are trained to be like objective, black and white. That's not how the world works. The world works on feeling and emotion. And by creating stages for Alan and artists like Alan to express themselves reaches people in a completely different way. Like lots of people came here today for the arts principally, and then the science will follow. And it really reaches a much broader audience and gets people thinking about these quite serious, but also quite fascinating challenges that we're trying to overcome as scientists. So that's, I guess, the main reason that we try to support creatives and artists for work in Iceland.
Brilliant, thank you so much. And I think just to touch on that point about feeling and emotion, and as Fergus said, if you haven't seen the work, definitely go and try and take a few minutes afterwards to go and look at it, because there's so much feeling and emotion in that. And I wonder, Alan, if I could ask you to maybe expand a little bit on that connection between, you mentioned.
So obviously climate challenge is one of the biggest things that's facing humanity, and but it doesn't tackle everyone climate challenge affects everybody. It's one of the biggest challenges that we are facing, but it doesn't affect everyone equally. It affects different people in different ways. Usually marginalised, disenfranchised groups are actually more affected, living in areas that might get flooded because of poor economic situations, because of disabilities or other kind of protected characteristics. Thank you. A lot of in areas where there is a lot of natural disasters because of increased fluctuations in climate. And if there's casualties in terms of a lot of people who do lose lives are actually disabled people. In floods, you can't make it to a boat, etc. Also moves. Societies trying to move towards a more sustainable way of living, but not necessarily taking into consideration the needs of people with disabled people. Such as one of the biggest ones is transport. Disabled people need cars to get around. Some disabled people need plastic straws to be able to consume food out and about in a safe way. They need chopped up fruit in plastic bags because of dexterity. You might not be able to do that yourself. They're out and about, so that will be. So if you're taking away these things, you're reducing mobility for people with disabilities. Evacuation plans don't consider the needs of people with autism and etc. A multitude of things. But also, disabled people have a huge lived experience of understanding how to navigate barriers. And what we're facing now is a changing climate, a changing world, with loads of barriers that we're all facing. Disabled communities know how to have spent a lifetime figuring out how to navigate these. We are resourceful, we understand the value of community care, etc. So we have a lot of skill sets to bring to climate action. But a lot of work within the sphere of climate action doesn't create doesn't bring these two things together. A lot of climate action excludes the disabled communities and people because it takes extra time and funding and resources. So back to the question, I thought it was important because at the time of my disability, I wanted to bridge that gap and make climate action, climate knowledge more accessible, and create a transition that's more, do my part in creating a transition that's more just and fair for everybody. And that's kind of why I kind of started working with forums and that kind of concept that I was already explained.
Amazing. No, and it's so interesting to hear this kind of two sides of that issue, in that the greater effect for the disabled community, but also the value that the disabled community can bring to creative solutions and ways of navigating our future together. So it's such a lovely way to hear it in your words. Audrey, I know it's not your area of expertise as a scientist, but had you thought about climate change and disability before Alan was on the cruise with you, or was it something new that Alan was bringing to you?
The honest answer is no, I have not thought about the link between climate change and disability. So when I thought about this question before I came here today, I really thought about how I would answer it. And I gravitated towards the concept of inconvenience. Climate change is inconvenience. And unfortunately, society views people with disability as inconvenient in too often and in too many ways. And I think that's a commonality here, and if we don't fix that, we do not live in a society that I want to be part of, and we will not fix the kind of problem.
Thank you, and I think that's really important to talk about is the uncomfortable aspects of these topics, but also to acknowledge that the people who are here, and I think people in the room, have an interest in creating and building a better solution for the future. And I was talking to someone just before the talk about how important it is to have people like yourself doing that hard work out at sea to get us data and to be able to build on these things, and then amazingly to have Alan to bring all of those feelings and emotion and human contact to that. It's a really, really beautiful project. Alan, can I ask you obviously you wanted to go to the Arctic to see it, but when you were there, what was the impact of being physically in a space like that where climate change is so visible and so prevalent?
So I don't learn a lot by reading. I'm dyslexic, and I have never actually read a full book cover to cover, so how I get information in. I get information through going out and being immersed in an environment, and also being immersed with other people. So the experience of being there, I learned so much just by being there, feeling it, seeing it, tasting it, all sorts of kind of getting it in, that information in different ways. And also being surrounded by Audrey and the team with Summer here. I can't do anything in the world unless I work with other people. I'm a collaborator, and I learn through that. So being immersed in that, it's a unique opportunity to be able to live with scientists at the top of their field, day in, day out, seeing like them get excited about research, feeling get pissed off, hungry, angry, all that stuff. And then taking, and being that was such a huge learning experience. It's just inspiring to make work. work, and then I did, and it's just an inspiring experience, which obviously can lead to creating project work.
Yeah, and that idea of physical learning and being in a space and embodying that experience is so important, and you can really, that really comes true in the work. I don't think you could have made what is here today without having gone to the place and experienced it yourself.
I also when I make stuff, I work with a team, so I can't, similarly as I can't learn on my own, I can't make on my own. I have to work with other people. And I think that, so I worked with Alan O'Connor on the artwork, and Laura and Hugh and but one, I'm rambling here. One thing that's kind of striking at the minute is this. I'm working on there's a theory called complementary cognition that's spearheaded by Helen Taylor from Stratford University, where she kind of saying that neurodiversity, so evolution purposefully creates a society and a community where people's brains purposely work differently to each other. Because if you have a group whose brains are purposely working differently, then you have better chance of survival and adaptation. So I kind of resonate a lot with that because I can't do anything unless I'm working with people, collaborating, and I can't.
Yeah, no, that's really, it makes so much sense, and the more different perspectives you have in a room, the more possibilities you're creating. And maybe on that, I could ask you, Audrey, Alan mentioned scientists getting hungry. What's it like having an artist on board your research vessel?
It wasn't. It was all a really great experience.
I paid him to say that.
It was like having a puppy go outside and snow for the first time. It's no, but it's beautiful because it's, you see the excitement about what we do. And yes, it's stressful out there. I mean, I'm responsible for an internship to get the samples to make sure we come back with all of our research and science objectives in the bag. And I forget sometimes, you know, how amazing it is to be out there, how privileged I was or am to be out there and be able to do this work. And for that, I'm grateful that Alan was there because I could see it in his eyes, those emotions that I have had and have, but I wasn't able to show or get out because of everything else that was going on while I was there. So it's lovely to see that excitement and amazement and nature and science and yeah, so no, we'll do it again.
Brilliant, and amazing to see your eyes lighting up when you talk about that relationship and that experience. And I think that must be something that you're hoping comes out of these projects, is to be making those bridges between different worlds. And I wonder, and if maybe we could go and just, after being here today and seeing the work that is being produced, what is your hopes for this project going forward into the future?
Sure. Yeah. So what we have today, I think Alan, you kind of described it to me a couple of weeks ago as kind of a work in progress still. Is that right? Or are we almost there?
I have many ambitions.
Many ambitions, okay. And I too have many ambitions. So like, I guess the honest answer is like, I don't know where this will end. Like if we wanted to know exactly where a project is going to end up, we hire somebody, like we hire consultants. We hire like EY, like sharing 360,000 euros for white shedding, like we would do something like that. But that's not what we want. Like we don't work with consultants who will tell us, you know, the answer we want to hear. We like to take a risk on an artist. Like I was telling someone earlier that we worked with like as an example of another artist group that we had supported in the past, we started off making a song, that they did. They composed a song about how water moves through the underground, like before COVID. And then a couple of years ago, we brought that new piece of work and into our choir to a cave in Slovenia and performed the piece there. But we didn't know that that was going to happen. In about a year's time, we earlier this year and part of last year, we set up a creative writing group, and that has produced a new black comedy play about climate change, where characters are like the moon is a character, the earth is a character, big oil is in there, industry, youth, poverty. But I had no idea that was what was going to come out of that creative writing program. And then in 12 months' time, we'll be putting it on in a 400-seat theatre in our map. Like I went to one of Alan's pieces last year, the Waking Walls, is it? In a lake in Cabin, was it? Yeah. And like I can maybe say like a tiny bit about that because of my experience. So I didn't know originally what I was going to see, but I was taken out in a boat and we did like kind of a circle of the lake, on which there was an old castle, and Alan's work was being projected on the castle wall, but there was also this like beautiful and haunting audioscape being presented as well. And such is the ambition that Alan has for his work that I have no idea where it's going to end up, but I just want to like unleash Alan to and like whatever your dreams are for this, we're here to support it. And that's what we always try to do with our artists. So yeah, so watch this space, you know what I say. Yeah.
Brilliant, and that sounds like an amazing cliffhanger for the future. Alan unleashed into the world with Forams. But we've covered quite a breadth of topics, and I know we have an audience from science and art and lots of other backgrounds. So we'd love to take some of your questions as well and open the discussion up to the floor. I might give someone a roving microphone. Or maybe, yeah.
And then my colleagues are here because I voiced these, but I asked the first question. But I like to bring
Nobody likes the first question.
My question is for all the panelists, but I love to see the artistic community and the scientific community coming together to kind of to explain the complexities of climate change. But my question is, how can the creative community provide hope to people? Because I feel like the scientific community, there's the information that's coming out from the scientific community makes, I mean, I work in the climate space, it makes me feel very hopeless, and I think for a lay person, it would make them feel hopeless. So how can you take the science and the knowledge and the understanding that we're gaining through science, how can you translate that into a hopeful message for people, even when there may not be as much hope as we'd like?
For me, it's collaborating. I'll go back to that we're bringing people together to, in a community way, of creating action. That itself is very helpful. When I work with communities and people to write, that we are, I think we're largely social beings, except for when my autism kicks in, I don't want to be. But we are largely social beings. So kind of, for me, bringing people together, providing space, funding, and opportunity for that to happen is where the hope comes from. I mean, you get people into a room that's trying to say something, hope just sort of, for me, that hope just generates out of it.
I see my role in moving our understanding about what climate change what actually looks like. A lot of the uncertainty. There's still so much we don't know. We don't know what climate change will look like for us here in Ireland in 20, 50, or 100 years. And because we don't know that, I think that creates a lot of anxiety. And if I can help giving everyone, society, a better picture about what it actually will look like, that will help and provide maybe some hope. And will also help us to prepare better for what we're facing.
How I would answer it would be like, one of the things that we try to do in our research centres, we try to put scientists and members of the public in the same room and to run projects together. And certainly what I've found is when you have people who are working like at the coalface of the climate crisis in terms of scientific research, like Audrey, and you put them in the same room as people who would like to know more. I think often that act of a conversation between someone, say, who's very interested and someone who's an expert, that little act there can be quite hopeful in its own right. What we're ultimately trying to achieve here as universities is trying to get ourselves out of the ivory tower to places like this, whereby we can see the role of a modern scientist being one who is an excellent communicator and is able to talk to people in a way that demystifies some of the science and can provide a hopeful conversation. That's how I would answer it.
Thank you guys, this has been so great today. Alan, my question is for you. What was one of the most exciting or memorable experiences that you took away from being on the Kelton Explorer?
I guess the vastness, the expanse of nature, and the ocean, the Arctic, the planet, the universe, from the microscopic to not I get that feeling of like I'm a speck among all of this. The forum is not like I make what you're calling a forum a speck. I'm a speck among the vastness of everything. And kind of that feeling was one. And then another was working with there's a lot working with Audrey and like Alessia and Tomas, Thomas and Avery. There's so much passion and drive into both of people all trying to do good, and for to learn and to there's a lot of passion in a vote of people trying to kind of, we were all doing important work, we knew we were. And it was just kind of really lovely to be around that. And that was one, just to be able to see all that happening and kind of and get inspired by it as a really cool memory.
Thanks very much indeed. It was a great presentation. I just want to ask, how do you solicit to bring other guests on board the Celtic Explorer in the future? And do you think that it could help raise awareness of climate change issues with the more survey work that you do over the coast of Ireland, like the Foram, like the rock called My Good Future? If you bring similar guests on board the exploration boat in the future.
The Marine Institute regularly invites artists to go on their research vessels. So they have a program, it's Artists at Sea, all artists, welcome to apply some time there, and they facilitated whatever they can. They were eager to do that. They have a great outreach program, and if you're interested, I strongly recommend that you get in touch with the Marines too. And ICRAC does it too.
Yeah, we're always happy to support any artists who would like to work with us. And as I said, we've worked with artists in many different forms over the years. And the experiences, have always been really positive. One thing that we were talking about, like scientists being hungry and stuff on the boats earlier. One thing might be helpful to mention in the applications is I have a scientist friend of mine whose name I won't mention, but I think some people here will know how he gets through the research cruises, especially the night shift. It's potato sandwiches. That is absolutely key. So if you say in your application you'd like to go on board and you've a stomach for potato sandwiches, I think you'd be in a good shot.
Thank you for the talk, it was really nice. In my opinion, everybody's opinion here, art and science are creative in their own way. And I just had a question for you, which is my voice is going to go. Do you think that working with Alan helped you, maybe not, shift your perspective on a research that you've maybe been doing for years and years and years? Did it give you a new horizon, maybe?
I think it made me aware that I need to talk about it more to the general public and to as many diverse audiences as I can. And to get more, to share my research more, because it is, because it is worth sharing and it is important, and people want to know about it. So, yes, so in that sense, absolutely.
Thank you, it's very interesting. I was just wondering about communication and how that happens, because we're talking about the need for diversity and multidisciplinary collaboration, and that's going to be crucial going forward in terms of how something like this gets communicated to the inconvenience of the whole thing. And it's not just inconvenience, it's complacency as well. And somebody mentioned feeling hopeless, and what the point Alan made about the group is really important, because even with the diversity of different types of thinking and brains, it's really important that that becomes part of it. And I was thinking about the media as well, and how much convenient denial and non-reporting there is at the moment. And I think that's another area that needs to be maybe thought about.
Maybe we can.
Communication can be hard. I think if I suspect we're going to go into a 4-year cycle based on last week's election results, whereby communication gets even harder. I remember when in 2017, I think, maybe within the first 6 months of Trump's presidency, he had the March for Science. Scientists don't often march. I remember there was a placard in, I remember that we all marched, I think, from maybe Grand Canal Dock to Marion Square. And there was all sorts of very clever placards that were written by scientists using like imaginary numbers to represent imaginary things and all this stuff. But there was one sign that really struck with me, and it was very simply written, and it was, when the introverts are on strike, things are bad. And like, as a scientist who's working in this environmental space, and as someone who's trying to communicate that outwards, the next 4 years are going to be hard. I woke up to the news this morning, hearing about nations withdrawing from the COP talks, just like that. The Argentinian leader pulled all of his negotiators yesterday morning. And it is going to be hard. Like, I think, like, as scientists were kind of blue in the face by kind of stating the facts and the figures. And that's why I certainly would advocate for trying to get across the reality of the climate crisis, but also the chinks of hope that are there in creative means like this. Because I think to a certain extent, there's only so much bad news that people can take. And if you want to elicit a change in them, you have to communicate with them in a way that works for them, but in a way that does bring a degree of hope in what will be a tricky 4-year cycle that's going down the line.
So I think, my turn now. Do you have any more questions? I think we have time for one more, if anyone has any questions.
Hi, that was such an interesting talk. So I put a speculative question that anyone can answer, but I feel like maybe Fergus and Alan might have some kind of go on it. Can you think of a space where there might be mostly artists and you have to invite a scientist to come and figure out what they're going to do? And that they might get all excited like a puppy playing with snow for the first time. You might think of it now, but if you do, I'll give you my email and send and let me know.
So a scientist residency.
Artist studios. So there's artists work in studios. It's usually a building with like 20 artists all working in it, which is a hub of social science like study waiting to happen. You have a group of people all trying like honest things to understand how the world works in kind of detailed ways. Kind of, yeah, I think putting a scientist into an art studio complex could be one. Probably others, I think.
So there is actually a new project that started recently that you were here in the front is involved with, Arise, which I think kind of was a little bit of that. It's like trying to figure out the sort of the wealth of science, art, and collaborations that have been happening, I think, over the last kind of 4 years, and trying to document them. One very practical thing that I would love to do is, if anyone's heard of Creative Mornings, that's kind of global movement. And what that does is that on the last Friday morning of every month, a load of creatives and artists meet together in the Tara Studios on Tara Street at about 8 in the morning. And there's usually a bit of music, and then you will have someone from the creative sector who give a short talk. I would love to bring an artist that we've collaborated on and a scientist as well to one of those it is a brilliant opportunity to kickstart discussions. And I don't know if they've ever had someone from a science background in there, but I would certainly love to bring that. And that's a very practical first step that we can make, for sure.
Thank you, and thank you so much for that question, because I think it's a lovely thing to end on, that idea of flipping everything that we've done here today completely on its head, which is the kind of thinking that we really need. And just to kind of wrap up, I think that the things that have come up across the panel and that are so important to take away with us is that the work that everyone is doing is so important, and that everyone has something to offer everyone else. This idea of collaboration and keeping those pathways and channels of communication open in all the different ways that we can imagine is so important for us to build the future that we want together, a sustainable and fair place for all of us to live, and to not lose that hope. because we wouldn't be here listening and talking to each other and fighting for these things if that hope didn't exist. So we have to mind this. Before we go, and I would again encourage you to have a look at the images and the artwork on your way out, if you can, before your lunch break is over. I would just like to say a really, really huge thank you to the National Maritime Museum and to Ray and Richard especially, and all of the amazing staff who've been running around and helping us get everything set up this morning. To Science Week and to the European Geoscience Day for funding the event and for making everything possible to happen here today, and to ICRAG, UCD, the University of Galway, for I don't know, supporting and housing these wonderful researchers and people. And especially thanks to Alan and Alan's team who are around, and Laura and Alva, for their contribution to the work and to the event itself. And also to Ashton, who is our Irish Sign Language interpreter, who has been making our event even more accessible today. And yeah, to you guys for coming and for all your wonderful questions. If you have time, I would be really grateful. There are some surveys. We have a digital survey, a paper survey, and an easy read survey. And so you can find the person who you feel is most appropriate for yourself. And we would love to gather some of your thoughts and feedback from the event, because as Fergus said, this isn't the end, this is just the beginning. So getting feedback will help to create the next step, based on what we, the audiences, want to hear. So that's you guys. So we'd be really, really grateful if you could do that on your way out. And this talk will be on Alan's website and the iCrowd website.
Yeah, so yeah, it's all recorded.
It's all recorded, so if you know anyone who you think should have been here and wasn't here and they would love to see it, that will be possible. So we'll do a follow-up email with all of that information so that you can spread the word as well. So I think one last time to our panel.